Hello everyone. A while ago I made a video criticizing Richard Dawkins for labeling pantheism as sexed up atheism, and giving my opinions on why I disagree with him, and basically giving other criticisms of the new atheist movement. Now, some of my opinions have not exactly changed, but I feel that I now have more to say on the topic. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, that there are conventional theists like Ken Miller, who's also a cell biologist, a very active advocate for evolution, but also a Roman Catholic who said that Richard Dawkins is a great friend and an honorable man. Now, there have also been atheists who have criticized Dawkins, some who have found him embarrassing, some very hardcore atheists who were talking about how they were embarrassed when he said something about having been molested as a child and how he wasn't affected, and an atheist found that embarrassing and was glad that Dawkins later sort of made an apologetic statement. Not a statement of defense, but a statement saying I was wrong to say that. But the atheist who made that comment still said, but religious people are still gonna use that against us. It still is gonna give us a bad image, and he should have been aware of that already. But anyway, on the topic of pantheism being sexed up atheism, I'm gonna basically comment that since making the first part, I've come to start to like the term sexed up atheism. I don't agree with the term, but when I'm talking with atheists and they're assigning baggage on me, I basically respond to them by saying, I don't believe in any sort of supernatural personal sky wizard or anything like that. Basically, my views of God are much closer to pantheism, or as Richard Dawkins calls it, sexed up atheism. So I mean, I kind of like saying that to atheists when they're arguing with me. And there have been atheists who have criticized pantheism. There was someone who said, but doesn't believing in everything being God make God completely irrelevant? And I actually said, absolutely not. I think it's the exact opposite. It really makes everything much more glorious, much more beautiful. And in some ways, it's how we naturally perceive things when we're born. We look upon everything as sacred and as divine, and look upon everything with wonder. And I think the term God is, I think, a perfectly usable term. Now, some other comments that I want to make. Pantheism is not some new, pathetic attempt to still believe in God. I think most pantheists who I've heard stories from have kind of talked about how they thought it was something that only they understood, that it was just something that this one individual, that them as an individual had thought of, but then they found out that not only are there other people who've come up with this idea, but there's a word for it, pantheism. And I think most pantheists I've heard the stories from have basically, they've been atheists and then they've become pantheists. Now, I'm sort of an exception. I'm not sure if I can ever say that I ever was an atheist. I mean, for me, believing in the more traditional God I mean, my parents were atheists, but for me, the more supernatural creator was kind of what came naturally for me. And my parents had a hard time accepting me holding some of the supernatural Christian beliefs when I was a child. I mean, I've moved away from them. And another criticism I'm going to give of Richard Dawkins is in The God Delusion, I forgot where in it, he mentions Brahman as another god like Zeus or the Abrahamic God or Allah. And I mean, a lot of people probably say that Allah and Adonai, the Abrahamic God, are the same God. But I mean, one of the things is, or that Allah and God are both just different words for God. That's what I meant. Sorry. But I kind of felt it seemed to be very unresearched to say that Brahman was another god like God or Zeus or Baal or anyone like that. I mean, Brahman is regularly, another term that people have for Brahman is the all. Brahman was sort of a all that exists. And it was this Brahman is something that according to my knowledge, predates Christianity. So that's one of the criticisms that I've thought of something Richard Dawkins says in The God Delusion. Something else that Dawkins says in The God Delusion that I've heard criticized by other people. Actually, this is from an atheist, where he says Martin Luther King Jr. was not inspired by his Christian faith at all. He was inspired by Gandhi. I mentioned that to an atheist. And this atheist said Martin Luther King Jr. was inspired by his Christian faith. Or the exact words were, "Oh yes, he was." And it's like, yeah, a guy who preached about following in the footsteps of Jesus, not being inspired by his Christian faith. Another inaccuracy from Dawkins. But there is one good thing that The God Delusion did for me. It led me to fully embrace pantheism. I'm not kidding. It was reading The God Delusion where after having some leanings towards pantheism, it was reading The God Delusion that led me to fully embrace it. So, thank you, Richard Dawkins, and thank you, viewers, for watching. Shalom.